Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Yoruichi, Sui-Fong and Harribel. Part 1. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time let's get into the video. Lightning flashed the sky. For a second it was day. The thunder that followed blasted the sky. The rain pelted the ground. Two figures stood out in the open. The rain pelted their faces, but neither moved. They were surrounded by large craters and black flames. Rocks were demolished and trees burned. The black flames roared, full of life despite the heavy rain. "It's over, Sasuke," Uzumaki Naruto said in a calm voice. His clothes were burned and singed. His eyes were dark red with slits surrounded by gold. Naruto glared at his former teammate and friend. Lightning flashed in the distance followed by booming thunder. Uchiha Sasuke sneered at Naruto. His clothes were the same, burned and singed. He began to chuckle followed by a cackle. "It certainly is Naruto," Sasuke replied. Sasuke raised his left hand. Suddenly a roar was heard. Naruto looked up in surprise. A giant dragon made of lightning appeared from the clouds above. Was he setting this up from the beginning? Naruto thought looking at Sasuke. Naruto nodded in determination and faced the dragon. "Die, Naruto!" Sasuke exclaimed in victory. The dragon hit the ground at the speed of lightning. A flash of white devastated the entire area. The storm clouds disappeared leaving a clear blue sky. When the blast cleared, Sasuke stood over the body of Naruto. "In what world could you ever stand against me?" he asked the unconscious Naruto in disgust. There was no reply for a second. "You know," a cold voice said from the ground, "I wondered that too." Sasuke jumped back in surprise. Naruto slowly stood up. "How are you alive?" Sasuke exclaimed in anger. "That was my strongest jutsu." Naruto ignored Sasuke and slowly tested his body. He looked at his arms and clenched his fingers. "Alright, I was able to stop the nerve damage," Naruto said to himself. Sasuke watched this with increasing rage. He drew his sword and activated Susanoo. Naruto looked at the violet warrior-like deity. Naruto looked into the eyes and smiled. "Your power," Naruto said with a small smile. "Itachi said I would have to fight that. He said you passed him in power, but," Naruto trailed off. His smile disappeared. The comment caught Sasuke off guard. "What did Itachi tell you?" Sasuke asked. His face was livid. The Susanoo drew its bow made of Amaterasu, causing Naruto to frown. He looked at Sasuke. "You aren't Uchiha Sasuke," Naruto said. "Itachi told me that the brother he had sacrificed everything for had died." "Liar," Sasuke yelled. Susanoo released its bow. In a blinding speed the arrow tore through Naruto's body. Sasuke sneered as Naruto fell. "That was close, wasn't it?" a voice behind Sasuke said. Naruto slowly appeared behind Sasuke as the Susanoo faded away. Why are you still alive, Naruto?" Sasuke asked, standing back to the unharmed blonde. Naruto held out his arm. A black crow appeared from the sky and landed on Naruto's shoulder. Sasuke looked at the crow. He gasped in realization. The crow had Sharingan in both eyes. "Where did you get that crow?" Sasuke asked in a strange calm. Naruto petted the crow. It cawed in happiness. "It was a gift from someone I consider a brother," Naruto replied. The crow slowly closed its right eye. Naruto turned to Sasuke. Naruto's face was monotone and sad. "When we were young I hated you." Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "You had everything, but threw it away for power, for hate. I wanted to bring you back not because of friendship, but because you were my kin. You felt the same pain I had. That feeling transcends friendship. We were more than friends. We were family." Naruto looked down. "Even though we were family you still left. That's why I hated you." The crow felt Naruto's sadness and gently pecked on his forehead. Naruto smiled at the crow and turned back to Sasuke. "I told you if we fought both of us would die," Naruto said. He shook his head. "I've grown and realized my mistake." Naruto glared at Sasuke. "Sasuke, if we fight you will die." Sasuke was silent for a second. He began to laugh. "You've always been a pain in my sides, Naruto." He glared at Naruto. "I'll end you once and for all. Naruto." Naruto stood still as Sasuke slashed at him. Naruto caught Sasuke's sword. "I've surpassed you, Sasuke. You can't beat me," Naruto said. "Die!" Sasuke exclaimed. He raised his right hand. "Chidori." Sasuke plunged the Chidori into Naruto's chest. Naruto kept silent as Sasuke's arm went through him. Sasuke smirked in victory. "I don't think you get it," Naruto said, closing his eyes. The crow caught at Sasuke. Sasuke jumped back and activated Susanoo. His Susanoo drew its bow and shot it at Naruto. Suddenly the bow was blocked by violent large red chakra. The red chakra began to grow. It surrounded Naruto and began to take shape. Sasuke watched in shock as a black Susanoo similar to Itachi's appeared. but it wasn't done growing. The Susanoo's entire body appeared with an unharmed Naruto on its right shoulder. Dark red chakra began to form around the Susanoo's feet. In seconds a gigantic 10-tailed fox appeared. The Susanoo crouched down on one knee and placed a hand on the fox's forehead, as if the two were master and pet. Naruto looked down at Sasuke. "This is my Susanoo," Naruto said. "Why do you have that power?" Sasuke's Susanoo began to grow, the anger feeding it. "That power belongs to the Uchiha." Sasuke's anger fed the Susanoo more and more. Naruto watched in silence as the dark purple turned pitch black. Naruto stared at the black Susanoo. It radiated hate and anger. It drew its bow and aimed at Naruto. "Fetch," Naruto commanded. The 10-tailed fox charged at the black Susanoo. Susanoo shot the bow. The bow collided with Naruto's Susanoo as the fox pounced on Sasuke's. Naruto's Susanoo, not being complete, staggered back as the arrow drilled into its chest. The black flames from the arrow began to burn its body. Naruto stared at the flames and closed his left eye. "I need your help," Naruto said. The black crow appeared on Naruto's shoulder and stared at the flames with its left eye. The flames slowly disappeared. Naruto opened his left eye and turned to Sasuke. "Get off!" exclaimed Sasuke as the fox attacked him relentlessly. Sasuke shot the fox with a Matarasu. The fox roared at Sasuke and shot a large black ball of energy at him. The blast covered the entire area. When the blast cleared, Sasuke was on the ground with his violet chakra receding back into him. "How?" Sasuke gasped, glaring at Naruto. He tried to stand only to fall back down. Naruto released his technique and landed with a light thump. He walked over to Sasuke and looked into his eyes. All he saw was hate. The Sasuke he had once known was gone. "I'm sorry, Itachi," Naruto thought. "I couldn't save him." Strange black markings began to appear on Naruto's body. Naruto pointed a finger at Sasuke and said, "Sage of 6. Chakra implosion." Sasuke's eyes widened. Black markings began to spread all over his body. The markings began to glow a dark red. Sasuke knew what would happen. "Naruto." "Sasuke," he pleaded. "Don't." Naruto stared at Sasuke for a moment. The red markings slowly disappeared from Sasuke's body. Naruto turned his back to Sasuke and began to walk away. The crow turned to Sasuke and cawed. Naruto turned to see a sword impaled into the crow. "Sasuke!" Naruto exclaimed, jumping back. Suddenly Sasuke appeared in front of him. Naruto felt a cold metal pierce his heart. He fell, clutching his chest. "You bastard!" Naruto exclaimed. "I spared your life." Sasuke stared at Naruto in disgust. He spat on Naruto and sneered. "The crew used Izanagi," Sasuke said. "That's how you survived all my attacks." Sasuke slowly closed his left eye. He smirked and said, "It cost me an eye, but I was able to nullify your illusions with my own." Sasuke pointed to his closed eye. "And since this is the eternal Mangekyou, my eye will eventually heal. You see, Naruto, you could never beat me. My hate surpasses everything." Sasuke pulled his sword out of Naruto's chest and raised it to finish him. He paused for a moment. He stared at Naruto. Something tugged him not to kill the blonde in front of him. A small voice in the back of his head. Naruto stared the hesitating Sasuke. "Sasuke," Naruto said. Sasuke shook his head and said, "It's over, Naruto." Sasuke brought the sword down for the finishing blow when he stopped. "What is this?" Sasuke struggled. "I can't move." The world began to shift as if it was a Rubik's cube. Sasuke awoke kneeling on the ground. The red markings were back and intensifying. "It can't be," Sasuke said, looking up at Naruto. "How did I fall into your genjutsu?" Naruto turned to the crow on his shoulders. "Itachi once got me with a genjutsu that didn't use his eyes, but sound, and was thanks to this guy that you fell for it." Sasuke's face turned from shock to a smile. Sasuke began to laugh. "You really are unpredictable, Naruto," Sasuke said. "You got me. You beat me a long time ago." "Goodbye, Sasuke," Naruto said. "Goodbye, Naruto," Sasuke said with an apologetic smile. "Let's meet again in the next life." Sasuke brought out his hand to shake. Naruto reached down and took the handshake. Naruto smiled and wiped the tears from his eyes. A single tear flowed down Sasuke's cheek. The markings turned whites, and Sasuke slowly turned to ash and blew away with the wind. Naruto looked up and stared at the clearing skies. "Yeah, let's meet again in the next life," Naruto said, smiling at the sky. The crow cawed in sadness and looked at the sky. "Don't worry," Naruto said, petting the crow. "We'll see him again someday." Naruto began to walk towards the village when he felt a putrid chakra. The sky quickly turned black and the moon appeared. Naruto looked up in confusion. The moon began to crack. Why was the moon cracking? Naruto thought, running toward his village. The moon blasted apart, revealing a giant creature with 10 tails. The creature roared and everything went black. Naruto clenched his fists as he stared at the monster. It all made sense now. Why he was giving the power he had. This was his final test. Naruto began to slowly walk toward the creature as it fell to earth. He felt his friends and comrades walking behind him. They were all giving him strength. "Naruto," a familiar voice said. "Can you hear me?" "Kurama," Naruto said out loud. "You're alive. I can't talk to you like this for long, but you need to stop us." Naruto nodded. "Don't worry, I will." "That's the Naruto I know. We'll meet again, Naruto." "Wait for me," Naruto exclaimed. He broke into a run and charged at the falling beast. "One more time. Lend me your strength, everyone." Naruto jumped at the beast. All his training, his pain, his happiness, his friends, everything he had done was for this moment. Naruto roared as he clashed with the Jubi. This was the end, his final test. Naruto began to fall. Fall. Why was he falling? Everything was pitch black. Why was everything pitch black? Naruto slowly awoke. His whole body hurt. Why did his body hurt? Naruto examined his surroundings. He saw a giant broken statue. The statue was familiar, but why? There was blood all over Naruto's hand, but it wasn't his. The air was cool and relaxing. It was night, but where? Naruto began to explore the area. So much sacrifice, Naruto thought as he looked at the destruction that surrounded him. He could tell that these ruins were the remains of some large village. This place is nostalgic, Naruto thought, exploring desolate and destroyed village. There were no living beings, only corpses. Naruto walked through the rubble and burning buildings as he passed corpse after corpse of the deceased. Whatever happened here happened recently, Naruto thought. What could have caused this? The putrid stench of death assaulted Naruto's nose. If it wasn't for his intensive training, he would have puked. Naruto continued to walk in a nostalgic daze around the village. Every so often he would pass a spot that was especially familiar to him. "Ichiraku's raiment stand," Naruto said, reading the broken sign. A smile appeared on his face. "Why am I smiling?" Naruto saw himself happily slurping bowl after bowl of noodles when a masked man came and dragged him away. Naruto chuckled as he saw himself escaping from the masked man's grip and running back to the stand. Who was that man? Naruto saw a large monument with 5 familiar heads on it. Something about the monument called him to it. When he reached the heads, he saw a man sitting on the 4th head. Naruto walked next to and sat down beside the man. Naruto smiled as he combed his hand through his wild blonde hair. "It's been a long journey," Naruto said to the man. The man nodded. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Naruto said. The man nodded. "I don't remember anything." The man nodded. "There's one thing though," Naruto said, looking into the night sky. "I have to return." The man nodded. "Do you know who caused all this destruction?" Naruto asked. The man nodded. "Will you tell me?" The man nodded. "His name is King," Naruto asked. The man nodded. "Can I find him if I return?" Naruto asked, standing up. The man nodded. "So where do I go now?" he asked the man. Naruto closed his eyes as in concentration. The cool night air relaxed him. Minutes passed before Naruto opened his eyes. "Maybe I should travel the world. I'll find a way to return," Naruto said. The man nodded. Naruto began to walk away when he stopped and said, "I've been meaning to ask. Why are there chains all over your body?" The man nodded. "You're waiting for something?" Naruto asked in interest. "What are you waiting for?" The man nodded. Naruto began to cry. "Anything," he said to himself. The sun was slowly rising. Naruto looked over the village and smiled. He sat down next to the man. Naruto sat there alone watching over the village. The man wasn't there. Where had the man gone? Why was Naruto alone? Who had he been talking to this whole time? "I'll wait with you," was all Naruto could say through his tears, "until something happens." How many years? How many years had he been there? How many years had he been sitting in that same spot? Why was he still here? Why wasn't he aging? None of these questions even remotely interested Naruto. Insanity did that to you. How many times had he gone insane? 26, 34, or 88 times. He had given up count a long time ago. Naruto had become bored of insanity. He no longer felt it. Nothing concerned him. Everything was boring except for one thing. Finally, the last chain out of 1,000,000 or more was slowly disintegrating. Naruto looked at the chain with desperate hope. Nothing else around him mattered. The last chain, Naruto thought, now something will happen. He had lost count of the number of years he had sat in that spot where the Leaf Village used to be. Maybe a few 100,000 or more, give or take 1,000,000, but as he watched the last chain disappear into his chest, he had one thought. Something has to happen. As he was engulfed in a blinding light. Rin Tsubakura was enjoying lunch at his computer when the hollow alarm started beeping. Surprised by the sudden noise, he dropped his bento box all over the floor and his clothes. Ignoring the sticky feeling of his hakama, he rushed to the control panel, but froze at what he saw. "There's a hollow in Soul Society," he yelled as he watched the screen. The others around him ran to his tracker screen, and sure enough there on the screen was the symbol of a hollow appearing in Soul Society. Okan looked at the info that was appearing on the hollow, his eyes widened and was the first hollow to ever enter Soul Society. It has no spiritual pressure. He exclaimed. How is that possible? The others looked at him in confusion. What do you mean it has no spiritual pressure? Asked Yosu, who had run over to them. Okan answered as he started typing on the keyboard, everything in existence has spiritual pressure. Even if it's just a sliver. Whatever this hollow is, the fact that it's here means that Soul Society is in danger. A few seconds passed and the alarm sounded. Okan ran to the emergency intercom. Attention all Shinigami, a hollow has appeared in Soul Society. I repeat, there is a hollow in Soul Society. All available Shinigami find and eliminated. Proceed with caution. Okan finished as he ran back to Rin's computer. Captain? He called into the machine. He's in a meeting, Yosu reminded. Wait. Rin exclaimed, the hollow, it's disappearing. And just as he said, the hollow was gone and the monitor went blank. The captains were in a meeting when the security alarm rang. The captains froze as the alarm came on. The alarm was only rung when something dangerous happened in Soul Society. Then the voice of Okan came alive over the intercom. When he had finished, the captains were on edge, all their eyes turned to Yamamoto, whose eyes were halfway open. He raised his walking stick and pointed it at the captain of 9th Division, Kensei Muguruma. Take your division and find the hollow. Capture it, but do not kill it. We must find out how it entered Soul Society. Not skipping a beat, Kensei nodded as he disappeared with a shunpo. When the captain disappeared, Yamamoto pointed his stick at the newly appointed captain of the 12th Division, Urahara. Return to your division and get ready to study the hollow. Never has a hollow set foot in Soul Society. This is the first and will be the last. He said in a tone that made a lot of the captains shiver and actually feel bad for the hollow. It was never a good idea to anger the captain of the 1st Division. Naruto gasped as he shot wide awake. He paused in his panting to look around his surroundings. He was in what looked like an old-style room. He rubbed his eyes. He was under warm blankets. Shaken off the drowsiness, Naruto tried to stand only to feel something weird under him. Confused, Naruto looked down to see 10 fox-looking tails that were all a skull-white color. Naruto frowned and shut his eyes. I know that I don't have tails, Naruto thought with conviction. When I open my eyes, the tails will be gone. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to see the tails in the same position as they were before. Damn, Naruto thought as he slowly dragged his hand across the tails. Weirdly enough, he could feel his hand as he did this. Naruto slowly tried to stand up, succeeding only to fall on all fours like an animal. This was when he also realized that he was naked. What's going on? Naruto thought, where am I? He looked around again and saw a door. He tried to walk towards it when he paused. He could feel someone coming, but what made him freeze was the energy he was feeling. In all the years he had watched humanity, he had never felt this before. This isn't chakra, he thought to himself. The energy slowly got closer. Naruto once again tried to move, but he didn't see anywhere else to go to. There were 2 shadows on the other side of the door. Naruto sat crisscrossed as he waited for the people to enter. I'll go in first, you follow, a young voice said. It's okay, Shiro-chan, an older voice chuckled, it's not like he's going to attack me or anything. The only response was a grumble and the door sliding open. In walked a short white-haired boy with turquoise eyes. He had a glare while he looked at Naruto. Following him was an old lady with light gray hair. She held a smile as she looked at Naruto, but it seemed strained. The boy was radiating an energy that Naruto had felt. In fact, it was rolling off of him in waves. Naruto couldn't help but notice that the lady was shivering. They both seemed to be ignoring his nakedness. Does that kid know how to control his power? Naruto thought to himself. Hello, the old lady said to Naruto as if he were a lost puppy. Do you feel better? She asked. Naruto frowned at the way she was talking to him, but let it pass over him. The short boy growled at the lack of response, probably taking it as disrespect. Hey guy. She asked you a question, he said. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the tone. He tried to say something when he made the sudden realization. I forgot how to speak. He remembered. In the years he had spent alone, no one had ever talked to him or let alone seen him. Not having anyone to talk to, he had given up on talking, and his voice had disappeared from lack of use. Naruto rubbed his head as he sighed. The memory of his isolation hurt him. Let's see if I can still do this, Naruto thought as he opened his mouth. The two waited in anticipation when the strange guy opened his mouth as if to speak. Naruto pointed to the boy known as Shiro-chan. This piqued the two's interest, but also seemed to gain Shiro's confusion. Now what was the word, Naruto thought as he tried to sound out syllables with his mouth. SHSH. The two leaned in slowly as Naruto sounded some words. SHH Shoshu Shore. Naruto smirked as he remembered how to say the word. He pointed at Shiro with more vigor. Short. Naruto exclaimed. The Shiro and I'm fell at the outburst. What did you call me? He asked, dusting himself off, glaring at the guy. Naruto smirked at the boy. Short, short, short. Naruto taunted in a raspy yet deep voice. Hashirama was about to charge the guy when he heard laughing coming from beside him. He turned to his grandma. She was laughing. Toshiro looked at his grandma in confusion. "Can you tell us your name?" she asked, walking toward Naruto. Naruto frowned and stayed silent. His name was Naruto, right? Tensei looked around district after district searching for any signs of a hollow, but nothing had appeared. None of the residents felt or saw anything. Damn machine must be broken, he thought as he called his man back. There's no way a hollow could have entered Soul Society. It was probably a mistake. It was time head back and report to the old man. 3 months later. Naruto awoke with a small yawn. He looked out the window of his room. The sun was slowly rising. "It's a nice day today," he thought as he climbed out of bed. He looked at his roommate, who was still asleep. Naruto walked out of the room. The outside of the home was nicely kept, with a few beautiful hedges surrounding the house. Naruto smiled as the rising sun slowly hid his face. He had been living here with Toshiro and his granny for 3 months. At first it was awkward for Naruto to be close to people, but he soon got used to the two. Naruto didn't speak unless it was necessary. That said, Naruto still had problems communicating. His voice was all but cured. It didn't matter to him though because he hated speaking. Another thing that annoyed Naruto was his tail, or should be said tails. He never did understand why he had them, and when he was asked about them from his 2 residents, he would always shrug and remain silent. "Good morning," a voice from behind said. Naruto didn't turn to see who it was. He knew by the power he was feeling that the voice belonged to Toshiro. Over the months their relationship had grown. At first they hated each other, but as time passed they soon called each other friends. Well, Toshiro called Naruto that, but Naruto refused to call anyone friend. After all, friends will wither away sooner or later, he thought. In fact, Naruto could say that he was Toshiro's only companion, other than that Momo girl that Toshiro always spoke about with a sour face. The other kids were afraid of Toshiro's power and stayed away from him, all except that girl Momo. Apparently the girl had stopped visiting when she had become a Shinigami. Naruto had personally never seen a Shinigami before, but something in his head to him to stay away from them and stay away he did. The only ones who had actually seen Naruto were Toshiro and Granny. Naruto stayed quiet as Toshiro walked next to him. "Why do you always wake up early?" Toshiro asked as he walked up next to Naruto. Naruto remained silent. "Come on, aren't you going to say anything?" Toshiro asked, trying to get Naruto to speak. Before Naruto could reply, the two were hit with a wave of energy. Naruto turned to see a girl with black hair tied in a bun wearing a standard Shinigami uniform, a black hakama. She was glaring at Naruto and had her sword held out pointing it at him. Naruto was about to say something when Toshiro beat him to it. "Momo!" he exclaimed. The girl named Momo looked at Toshiro with a mix of emotions. Naruto saw happiness, anger, surprise, and something else. "Don't worry, Toshiro," she said with determination in her eyes, "I'll save you." "What do you mean?" Toshiro asked. Naruto looked at the girl confused, though not showing it. His muscles slowly tensed as he thought of what the girl would do. He was right, because as soon as his muscles tensed she charged at him with a battle cry. Naruto stood there as Momo charged at him. "Do I fight back?" he thought as she swung at him. Unsure of what to do in this kind of situation, Naruto decided to continue dodging the girl's strikes. "She's slow," Naruto thought, weaving and dodging the wild strikes. "Momo! What are you doing?" Toshiro yelled as he ran after the two. Naruto was beginning to get annoyed as he dodged another slash. "Time for some offense," he thought. Naruto bent low and attempted a sweep kick. Momo jumped backwards over the leg and began chanting. She pointed at Naruto with her left hand. "Pado 31. Shock him, shot of red fire," she yelled. A medium-sized ball of red energy flew towards Naruto. Naruto instinctively pointed his index finger and shot a beam of red energy. The red beam grazed Momo's shoulder as she was pushed out of the way by Toshiro. The beam tore through the ground before exploding in the distance. "Momo, stop!" Toshiro yelled, "Why are you attacking him?" Momo looked at Toshiro in confusion and then shook her head as she lowered her drawn sword. "Shiro-chan," she smiled, "I know that you aren't a Shinigami and that you don't know a lot about hollows, but she pointed at Naruto who was slowly standing up, "is an evil monster. He's a hollow. You just saw the destruction he caused." Naruto smirked at the girl. He aimed his index finger at her. Toshiro moved in front of Momo. "Move," Naruto ordered. Toshiro shook his head. Naruto couldn't figure out he was thinking as he looked at Naruto with mixed emotions. There was confusion, anger, sadness, and something else that Naruto couldn't identify. Not waiting to hurt the boy, Naruto scoffed and lowered his arm. Momo saw this as an opportunity and pushed Toshiro to the ground. She charged straight at Naruto with vigor. "Momo, stop!" Toshiro yelled as stood up to run in the way. "Get out of the way, Shiro-chan. Hato number 1. SHM, thrust." Momo yelled, aiming her palm at Toshiro. What happened next surprised Naruto. Toshiro flew away a few feet and landed with a sickening thud. "Sorry Shiro-chan, but it's my duty to finish this," the girl yelled, trying to sound brave. Naruto could see that the girl was shaken up at the fact that she had just attacked her best friend. Momo rushed at Naruto once more. "This time I'm not holding back," Naruto thought as he bent down on all fours waiting for the Shinigami. "Now that I know that she can use those attacks, I won't underestimate her again." Momo noticed the glare in Naruto's eyes with a flinch. "He's gotten serious," she thought in fright. "At least now Toshiro will see the true nature of hollows, and I'll be able to show Aizen-sama that he can trust me." She swung at Naruto with a vertical strike. Quickly avoiding the slash, Naruto swung his arm in a wide arc while charging, trying to clothesline the Shinigami. She dodged the swing by bending low and thrusting at his exposed body. Naruto twisted his body, barely missing the blade by a hair. "My body hasn't gotten better yet," he thought. "My response speed has decreased." The strange but plausible fact was that Naruto's nerves were also out of whack. The same as his voice. He couldn't move in all the years he was bound by the chains, and his body functions had disappeared. He couldn't move as he once used to, but none of this bothered Naruto. "As long as I'm not in that hellhole, I'll be fine," Naruto thought as he blocked a quick jab. The Shinigami jumped back and started chanting. Naruto thought, "I can't let her do those attacks. They're too random." But the smirk, he charged at the chanting Shinigami. He reached her in time to throw a punch at her face, but it was blocked with a cry of Bakuto 2. "Block." Naruto gasped as the Shinigami raised her left hand that was covered in a soft green glow and caught his punch. He flinched as she held his hand with a grip that didn't seem possible for a girl of her stature. "She's tougher than I thought," Naruto thought, but still stupid. Naruto pointed left finger in the girl's face. The red bean from before began to form at the tip of Naruto's finger. "Bakuto 4. Crawling rope," the Shinigami yelled. Naruto's left hand was suddenly tied to his side by a rope of green light that appeared from nowhere. "What's this?" Naruto thought, frowning. The Shinigami didn't waste any time as she began to chant again. Naruto, who was still trying to get away, mentally cursed when he heard the chanting. "Bakuto 1. First order restrain," she yelled. Naruto's arms were tied behind his back and were locked in place. He tried unlocking them, but fell to his knees as he struggled. "Damn," Naruto thought, "she must know a lot more of those attacks. I shouldn't have underestimated her." The Shinigami raised her sword and went for the finishing blow. The blade was stopped by a hand. "What?" Momo exclaimed in shock when a second Naruto stopped the blade. Naruto smirked in satisfaction. The technique had worked. He was able to replicate himself. Momo looked at the first Naruto and realized that he had 9 tails, while the other Naruto only had 1. He can split himself up to the number of tails he has, Momo thought, jumping away. Naruto stood up and dismissed his clone. Naruto moved his hands free. "How is that possible?" Momo asked. Naruto shrugged and disappeared. Momo started. 10 Narutos, each with only 1 tail, appeared simultaneously around Momo. Each had a different attack. In an instant Momo was on the ground. Naruto stared at the body, contemplating killing her, when a kind voice said, "Please don't kill my student." Naruto turned to the new arrival. He looked like a mild-featured man with brown scholarly hair and square glasses that enhanced his scholar look. He was wearing a black hakama like Momo's. "I didn't even sense him," Naruto thought as he prepared to attack. "Are you alright, Momo?" the man said from behind Naruto. "How did he?" Naruto thought, looking at the man. "Aizen-sama?" Momo asked, slowly coming to. She blushed and looked at Naruto. "I failed you. He's too strong. You told me to let you handle it, but I didn't listen. Forgive me, Aizen-sama." Aizen ruffled her hair as he gave a kind smile. "You did well, Momo," he said. "But let me handle it from here." Aizen lifted Momo and turned to Naruto. He smiled. Naruto frowned at the man. "What's with this guy?" Naruto thought. "Would you kindly come with me?" Aizen asked Naruto. "He hasn't dropped the girl yet," Naruto thought. Naruto glared at the man with hate. "Too bad." Suddenly he dropped on all fours and his tail shot straight at Aizen. He smirked when he saw a surprised look on Aizen, but that smile faded when he felt pain through his tails. "He cut off my tails," Naruto thought as he looked at the bloodied stumps that were his tails. "You should pay more attention to your opponent," a calm voice from behind him said. Naruto turned around to come face to face with a hand. Hato 33. Blue fire crashed down. Naruto was hit with agonizing pain in the form of blue fire. "Crap," Naruto cursed. Naruto slowly phased away, surprising Aizen. "That was interesting," Aizen said to Naruto, who stood behind him. "That was a bad move," Naruto thought as he reappeared. As soon as Naruto used Izanagi, his vision began to dim. Naruto didn't see the Shinigami raise his sword to strike him. Aizen swung his sword but gasped when it was caught by the hollow. The hollow looked at him and Aizen flinched. The hollow's eyes were dark red with gold around them, but they were bleeding. In his eyes was something Aizen had never seen before. Naruto jumped back and faced Aizen. Aizen began to increase his power level as Naruto prepared to charge. "You're dead, Shinigami," Naruto yelled. Naruto's dreamscape. It was dark. Naruto looked around. Everywhere he looked he saw darkness. There was no one else. He was alone again. That's when he heard it. "Foolish boy," a voice said. Naruto looked for the voice. Nobody called him boy. How long had he been alive? The nerve. "Show yourself," Naruto said. He was a bit surprised that he could complete an entire sentence without his throat killing him. "I'm right in front of you," another voice said. Naruto looked around to no avail. "I can't see you," Naruto said. "Open your eyes to everything," the voice commanded. Naruto, surprised by the order, tried to open his eyes, only to find that they were already open. That was pointless, Naruto thought, only to gasp as he heard his own thoughts out loud. "You still can't see me yet." "See," another voice said. Naruto was hit by a blinding light. In the maggot's nest. Naruto shot straight up only to freeze when he took in his surroundings. He was in a cage, a one-room cage that was dimly lighted. Naruto slowly tried to move and was pleasantly surprised when he found that all his body functions were working well, in fact they felt better than they had ever felt before. Naruto slowly stood and stretched when he felt his tails. They weren't cut in half. "Someone healed me," Naruto thought as he rubbed his hand across his tails, enjoying the sensation that came from them. He was brought out of his musings when he heard a noise from outside the cage. His head shot quickly to the cause of the noise. He frowned when he saw another cage across the hall from his. Inside was a man, or at least it looked like a man. He was painted white all over except his eyes, which were black. On his ears were yellow cones. Naruto looked at the figure with interest. The man looked at him with a look that Naruto didn't like. "Why do I feel like he wants to dissect me?" Naruto thought. "Tell me," the man said, "why are you here? What are you?" he asked. Naruto looked at the man with a passive frown. Naruto kept silent and sat on the bench in his room. "You haven't answered my questions," the man said in an annoying tone. Naruto rolled his eyes. "How long am I going to be here?" he thought. 3.5 years later. Naruto was stuck there for 3.5 years. His only form of company, a crazed man that wanted to dissect him. It turned out that the feeling he felt from the other man was dead on. Over the years the two had found a respect for each other. Naruto had learned that he was in a detention cell called the Maggot's Nest. He had also learned a lot about soul society from his prison mate. He and Mayuri Kuritsuchi were the only two prisoners that were actually locked up. The others were allowed to roam free. Naruto hated this. He wasn't treated badly, on the contrary he was given 3 meals a day, but all he could do anything in the cell except for eat and sleep. For some reason there was a seal that made it so that he didn't have to use the restroom. Naruto's hate of the Shinigami was slowly growing. He couldn't help but loathe the Shinigami. Mayuri kept having conversations with Naruto which were normally one-sided. Occasionally Naruto asked a question, but Mayuri's only response was to ask another question. This was common among the two when they talked with each other. "Answer my question first," and Naruto's voice faded away when he heard yelling and shouting. He sat at his bench as he listened to the yells increasing. For a moment the screams stopped. This had never happened before. He could have sworn that he heard a girl yell. There were no girls in the Maggot's Nest. A few moments passed and he could hear footsteps. They were coming closer and closer. Two people, Naruto figured by the sounds of their overlapping footsteps. He saw the two walk in front of his cage. He looked at them with a neutral face. The older-looking one was wearing a black hakama and it was covered by a white captain's haori. He had blonde hair that reached his neck, he also had one bang that went down the middle of his face. The other was a short blonde-haired girl that had her hair tied into 2 pigtails. She wore a black hakama. Even in the shadows Naruto could see her freckles. The man looked at Naruto and did something Naruto wasn't expecting, he smiled. "You're looking good, Hollow," the man said in a friendly tone. The girl behind him was startled. "Hollow? Why is there a Hollow here? And how could he be a Hollow, he looks human," the girl screamed. Naruto's face didn't lose its frown. The girl was loud and Naruto decided to announce that. "Annoying," Naruto said. The girl seemed to lose her fear as she flew at the cage, trying to attack Naruto. The captain pulled the girl off the cage and looked at Naruto. "I need to talk to the two of you," he said, gesturing to Naruto and Mayuri. Mayuri decided to speak then. "You've been promoted Urahara Kisuke. Congratulations," he said. The captain turned to Mayuri with a goofy smile and said, "Thanks, but I didn't come here to celebrate. I came here to ask you two for your assistance." Surprisingly to Naruto, the girl kept quiet. "What do you need us for?" Mayuri asked. Urahara seemed surprised. "You said us. When did you change?" He joked. Mayuri gave an empty stare at the Shinigami. Urahara's smile deflated and he turned serious. "I need you because I'm planning on creating a new organization unlike anything that has ever existed in Soul Society. I call it the Technological Research Bureau. I'd like you to be my lieutenant there." "And work under you?" Mayuri asked. "Of course, it's not such a bad proposal since you'll be directly under me, in other words, it would all be yours if I were to die," Urahara said with a small smile. Naruto listened with his eyes closed, he could hear Mayuri chuckling. "Why, you truly are an unpleasant man," he said. "I guess I'll accept your offer, and as much as I am content here, there is nothing to tinker with." Urahara clapped his hands as he cheered. He turned to Naruto. His face turned serious again. "As for you," he started, but Naruto interrupted. "I refuse," he said with his eyes still closed. This seemed to shock the two Shinigami. "You haven't even heard the offer yet," the captain said. Naruto opened his eyes, and the girl gasped when his eyes started to glow neon blue, then turn into a piercing gold. "It's of no matter," Naruto said with a tone of boredom. "Shinigami cause more problems than the fix." He glared at them. The girl almost tripped but was caught by the captain, who looked at Naruto with a serious face. "Sorry, you have to accept the offer, Mr. Hollow." He reached into his Haori and pulled out a rolled up piece of paper. He unscrewed it and held it out for Naruto to read the top words. "That sentence. You see, you have to accept the offer or else you'll die," he said as he retied the scroll and placed it in his Haori. Naruto was silent as he watched the two. A few minutes of silence passed. "A scare tactic, huh?" Naruto thought. "Very well, I'll play their little game." "What's the offer?" Naruto asked, crossing his arms. Urahara smiled and clapped his hands. "You, my friend, are to become a Shinigami." Everyone froze. Naruto looked at the captain as though he had grown multiple heads. The girl was sputtering on and on about how she thought he was a hollow and couldn't become a Shinigami. The captain silenced her and turned back to Naruto. "So will you join us?" he asked. Naruto looked at the man in silence. Naruto shrugged. Sasuke looked at the multiple-tailed hollow with a frown and asked, "What are you?" When Naruto didn't say anything, he continued, "When you first appeared in Soul Society, you had the symbol of a hollow. This put everyone on high alert because hollows had never appeared in Soul Society before. We sent out a search party to find you, but your hollow sign disappeared. It leads to my theory that you were close to a hollow before you came here." Naruto remained still. He couldn't answer because he didn't know. Sasuke frowned. "Later on we learned that there was a new being living in District 1, but there hadn't been any new souls that were born or sent there. So we deduced that it was probably the hollow. After capturing you there was a vote to study you or to kill you. I decided to petition for you to live because we could learn much from a hollow human. When I did some experiments on you I found out something quite amazing." Naruto looked the man in the eyes. There was something there, something dangerous. "You house more souls than the entire Soul Society," Sasuke said. Naruto and everybody else gasped, but Sasuke continued, "My previous theory was completely dispelled. You were never near a hollow. You're the hollow. You probably felt some strange force around you, but it was your own. So this leads me to do more tests, and from what I've learned those souls in you all had different fates with the chains of life. Am I right?" he asked. Naruto stayed silent. He was overwhelmed by what he was hearing. All those chains were the souls of all the people who had died during the war. Since he was the only survivor they must have latched onto him. "Some of the chains disappeared while others ate themselves to your heart, right?" Sasuke asked. All Naruto could do was close his eyes. "Then you are the creation of millions if not billions of Shinigami and hollow souls put into one body." Urahara said with a frown, "In simplistic terms you are what Shinigami call a kami." The entire room was silent. Not a word was spoken. After all, nothing could be said. Hashirama walked through the District 1 market in a daze. It had been 2 months since Naruto was captured. His granny had sent him to get some groceries. She had been worried about Toshiro's health. Ever since Naruto was captured by Momo and her teammate Toshiro had been in a deep depression. His only friend was gone. "The only guy who wasn't afraid of me," Toshiro thought bitterly. "He actually made fun of me." Toshiro smirked at the thought. Normally he would go off on anyone who made fun of him, and he did, but when he and Naruto attacked each other with insults, they would always end up laughing about it. It had only been 3 months, yet Toshiro thought of Naruto as a brother. "He's gone now," he thought, looking at the store sign. It was a hot day and Toshiro hated the heat. Gladly walking into the cool store, he looked at the clerk behind the counter. He seemed to be busy and didn't even look up at Toshiro. This place could get robbed and he probably wouldn't notice. Toshiro thought with a scowl. He walked through the store looking at the list that was in his pocket. At least there are watermelons on the list. Toshiro sighed as he finished reading the list. He was so preoccupied with finding the watermelons that he didn't notice another customer enter the store. Not finding any watermelons, he decided to walk up to the counter to ask if they had any in storage. "Excuse me," Toshiro said as he looked at the clerk that was busily writing something. The man didn't even glance at Toshiro. "Excuse me," Toshiro called a bit louder. The clerk continued to furiously scribble on the paper, completely ignoring Toshiro. Toshiro, who was getting angrier and angrier by the second, opened his mouth to yell, but was completely over-yelled by a voice behind him. "Hey stupid, stop being so rude." Toshiro, who was completely surprised by the noise, quickly turned around, only bump into the softest things he had ever felt. The clerk who was working was so surprised that he completely fell off his seat. Toshiro looked up to see a Shinigami with long, wavy ginger hair that had the biggest melons he had ever seen. She walked up to the startled clerk and lifted him up by his collar. "Apologize to him right now for being so rude," she yelled while pointing at Toshiro. The man quickly apologized many times over and over until the Shinigami finally dropped him. She marched right up to Toshiro and grabbed him by the scruff of his neck. This earned her an anger tick courtesy of Toshiro, who hated to be manhandled. "This is also your fault. You can't just lie there crying about it and not standing up like a man," she yelled at him. Toshiro, whose anger ticks had grown quadruple the amount, yelled back, "You're the one who knocked me down in the first place with those things. Are they even real?" The Shinigami raised Toshiro higher as he struggled. "Say that again, brat, and I'll pummel you," she growled with a sadistic smirk. Toshiro felt it would be in his best interests to stay silent, but that didn't mean she could manhandle him. He continued to struggle until he was released from her grasp. As soon as his legs had touched the ground, he was out of the store, the grocery list completely forgotten. The Shinigami walked out of the store, but the boy was out of sight. She smiled as she felt his spiritual energy. She started to walk the way he had run away. The boy's energy already surpassed hers, but he didn't know how to control it. She was determined to help him, just like he had helped her. The evening. Toshiro entered the room with a bag of groceries. After he had run home without groceries, his granny had offered to go in his place, but he refused. He had gone back to the market. This time he made sure to avoid any and all Shinigami. He sighed as he looked in the bedroom. His granny was already asleep. Toshiro frowned as he thought of his granny's condition. "She's getting thinner and thinner," he thought with a frown. Toshiro packed the food away and walked into the bedroom. He quietly got into his bed and in a few minutes he was sound asleep. Toshiro's dreamscape. He was standing in an open field. There weren't any signs of life. There seemed to be fog everywhere. It was freezing, but it didn't feel cold to Toshiro, in fact it felt good. There was an echoing sound, a voice that seemed to be calling him. In a giant fog cloud flew out a gigantic icy blue serpentine dragon with large wings that landed right in front of Toshiro. It was calling out to him, but Toshiro couldn't understand what it was saying. The last thing Toshiro heard was, "My name is," before a giant fog cloud covered him. Toshiro woke covered in a cold sweat. He looked at his granny who was still asleep. He looked in the corner to see a figure covered in the shadows. He froze as the figure slowly walked forward. "You should stop leaking your reiatsu everywhere and get some sleep," a familiar voice said. The figure walked into the moonlight and Toshiro relaxed. Illuminated by the moonlight was the Shinigami from the store. "What are you doing here?" Toshiro whispered, not wanting to wake his granny. The Shinigami ignored him and looked at his granny. "She looks cold," the girl said. Toshiro looked at his granny with confusion. She was covered in many layers of blanket, but she was shivering. Toshiro froze when he noticed something. The room was freezing. How come I never noticed this before?" Toshiro thought in shock. The Shinigami walked up to Toshiro and put an arm on his shoulder. "You should become a Shinigami," she said. "You need to learn how to control your power. If you stay here," then she looked at his granny, "she'll die." Toshiro looked at his grandma for a while until the Shinigami put her hand on his chest. "Do you hear a voice calling out to you?" she asked with a small smile. Toshiro nodded his head slowly. "When you find that voice you'll be able to control your power, but to do that you have to become a Shinigami." She stood up and walked to the door. "I'll be waiting for your decision." She left the house. For the remainder of the morning Toshiro stayed awake watching his granny. "I'm leaving," Toshiro said as he swung his pack over his shoulder. It had been 2 days after his meeting with the Shinigami. He told his granny of his plan the very morning. She was smiling when he told him that. She told him that he had her blessings and even made him his favorite sweets. "Goodbye, Toshiro," his grandma said as he walked away waving. Toshiro walked through the market district with a scowl. He watched the people interact and walk by. He would soon be protecting all of them. Toshiro reached the west gate that led into the Sarate. There, standing in front of the giant gate, was the ginger-haired Shinigami, and she was talking to the keeper of the west gate. She looked up to see Toshiro walking towards them. When she was close to Shiro asked, "What's your name, Shinigami?" The Shinigami smiled at him sweetly, "AWWW, he's so cute trying to act all serious." She said rubbing to Shiro's hair earning her tick marks, "My name is Ranjiku Matsumoto." She smiled holding out her hand. Toshiro took it and shook Hitsugaya to Shiro. He replied. "I have a question." Toshiro said. "And what's that?" "There's someone I want to find." Ranjiku smirked and looked at the boy. He already has plans. "If I know them," she said, "I'll help you find them." "Thanks," Toshiro said. The two started to walk towards the gate when Ranjiku spoke, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Toshiro smiled at the statement. He had a new friend. Though he would probably never admit it, it made him extremely happy. 3 years and 3 months after Naruto's time in the maggot's cage. Naruto walked past the other maggot nest inmates. He had been with them for over 3 years, yet he never once talked to any of them. Not that he could, but it felt strange to walk past the unknown faces. They looked at him with envy and anger. He knew why, of course. A Shinigami walks past them followed by 2 men that the prisoners have never seen before. The 2 men were obviously leaving the nest because the Shinigami was causally talking to them. Naruto looked back at the prisoners when they reached the nest's entrance. He stared at their poor faces and had one thought, what gives the Shinigami the right to imprison these people? Naruto walked out never to return to the maggot's nest again. Naruto quietly took in the sights as they walked through the streets of the Sirte. He ignored whatever the Shinigami captain was saying and avoided the gaze of his lieutenant. He couldn't avoid the gazes of all the other Shinigami they had passed. They would greet the captain and lieutenant with cheerful waves, but when they saw Naruto or rather his tails, their gaze would turn into an all too familiar sight. Just like the villagers. Naruto thought with a glare as they passed a gate leading into a medium-sized hallway, I truly hate Shinigami. Though Naruto had decided that his unhealthy hate for Shinigami came from his hollow side, he couldn't help but come to realize the fact that he himself was slowly starting to despise them. Urahara stopped in front of a giant double door and turned to the trio. "Okay Hiyori, you'll have to go," he said with a smile. The girls started to attack the older captain. Naruto and Mayuri watched the two with little interest. They were more interested with the large spiritual pressure coming from the other side of the door. "So this is where the captains are," Mayuri said out loud. Naruto looked at him. He had learned about the captains during his time in the nest. He was told that the captains were the strongest in all of Soul Society and that they had very high spiritual pressure, but what Naruto felt was interesting. Not powerful, but interesting. He looked at the door. The pressure he felt was large, but something told Naruto that he had more Ryatsu than all of them, and to that he smirked. "I feel their weakness," he said going into a thinking position, "perhaps there's no point in me becoming a Shinigami. I feel that I'm stronger than most of the people in that room." He finished with his eyes closed. This statement stopped the 2 wrestling Shinigami. Hiyori looked at Naruto. He seemed so serious. Naruto was expecting some kind of comment, but he wasn't expecting to dodge a kick by the shorty. "And your reason is?" Naruto asked glaring at the girl. Hiyori, angry that her kick missed, ran at him and barraged him with slaps. All of which were easily dodged. Naruto pointed at the girl and began to charge the red beam. Naruto felt a hand on his shoulder. "That's not a good idea," Urahara warned. Naruto let the attack fade away. "Show a little respect, idiot," Hiyori exclaimed. "The captains have the highest power level in all of Soul Society. To obtain the rank of captain is the greatest honor anyone can earn." Naruto kept silent for a moment. "I see," he replied. "Then what would you call a person who defeats a captain?" Naruto felt the power inside him and let it explode. It was as if the sky turned black and everything stood still. Hiyori fell to her knees. Mayuri struggled to stand. Urahara tightened his grip on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto controlled his power. After a moment the captain walked to the door. "Hiyori, go back to the 12th division. This is an official captain's meeting and I need to introduce these two to the other captains. I promise I'll tell you about it later." The girl seemed to accept this answer. She was still shaken up by Naruto's power because she kept silent all the way to the other entrance, but not before giving Naruto a glare. When she had disappeared behind the door, Urahara turned to the two and gave them a smile. "Shall we get going?" he asked as he displayed the door. The 3 walked into a closed room. Naruto kept his face in place but looked at everyone in the room. On either side were rows of Shinigami wearing white haras, and in the center was an old man who had the longest beard that Naruto had ever seen. At first glance the man looked weak and brittle, but radiated a power different from every other captain in the room. Each one of them looked at the arrivals, or rather Naruto's tails. Urahara walked to the left and took his positions in the ranks and left the 2 standing there. All was silent until the old man spoke. "Urahara, is the one in white the one you want to add to your squad?" "Yes, Satecho." Urahara answered without hesitation. The old man looked at Mayuri with evaluating eyes. Has he agreed to your conditions? He finally asked. Yes, Satecho. Urahara answered again. The old man pointed to Mayuri. Go stand behind your new captain. He commanded. Mayuri wasted no time and slowly walked behind Urahara, who smiled at him. Naruto was starting to like the old man. He was quick and straight to the point. I wonder, Naruto thought. Is this all there is to become a Shinigami? Pathetic. He froze at the last thought. Did I think that, or did my hollow side? He thought to himself. No, it was me. I have no hollow side. I am me. Naruto. Quickly shaking the question out of his mind, he looked up to see the old man standing in front of him. Naruto glared as he slowly took a step back. The head captain put a hand on Naruto's forehead. How did he? Was it you who let his spiritual pressure flow a moment ago? The head captain asked. Naruto remained silent. Speak when spoken to, boy, he said. Naruto froze. No one called him boy. Naruto started but saw Urahara's face. Yes, it was me. The head captain walked back to his seat. When he sat, he turned to Naruto, his eyes half open. Captain Urahara has told us about your condition through his research. Naruto looked at the old man. He turned to Urahara, whose face was covered by his eyes. His expression was unreadable. Do you know why you weren't killed after we studied you? The head captain asked. The reason does not interest me, Naruto replied, earning him a bemused look from the head captain. So you do not wish to become a Shinigami? For now I do. Then you will listen, boy. Naruto glared at the head captain. Your spiritual pressure is unlike anything we've seen and or felt before. When you appeared in Soul Society, your symbol was that of a hollow, but at the same time your spiritual pressure was zero at the time. It wasn't that your spiritual power hadn't developed like everyone else. No, your powers, both hollow and Shinigami, were in conflict. The two negated each other. Since you had more hollow power in you at the time your hollow energy stayed, while your Shinigami power separated from your body and searched for a place to rest. Naruto looked at the man for a few silent seconds. Alright, that explains why I have more of a hollow side than a Shinigami side. Naruto thought, then where did it go? Naruto asked. Yamamoto slowly opened his eyes and looked Naruto in the eyes. You now know why we only felt your hollow side, but we didn't sense your Shinigami pressure because of the place it resided in. Yamamoto paused for a second. Your power resided in the Sakyoku. Naruto didn't know how to react to this new info, but all the captains did. All the captains save Urahara gave startled gasps, your power being of Shinigami disinfused with the Sakyoku and masked itself as the weapon. Naruto looked at all the Shinigami in the room and did the only thing he could. What's the Sakyoku? He asked. Naruto wished he hadn't. He was giving a lecture about Shinigami history and the Sakyoku. Look. Naruto interrupted, I get it, my Shinigami powers had no place to reside in, so they hid in the Sakyoku. Naruto smirked. I understand now. You need me. You don't know what would happen if you were to kill me. Naruto chuckled. Shouldn't you be ashamed of yourselves? You act as if you're showing me mercy when in reality you're just protecting yourselves. Naruto broke out in laughter. The captains in the room seemed to tense a little at the disrespect, but they knew that Naruto was right. Be wise, boy, you, the head captain commanded. Naruto's smirk changed to a sneer. So basically, Naruto continued, ignoring the captain, you're saying that I control the most powerful Zanpakuto in all of Soul Society. He looked at Yamamoto straight in the eyes. The boy's eyes flashed gold. Yamamoto glared back. Be warned, boy, even if what you say is true, we will not hesitate to strike you down if you become a problem. Naruto calmed down and stared at the head. The other captains looked at Yamamoto and then turned to Naruto. Naruto looked at all of them before his eyes flashed gold. I'll be waiting for that day, head captain, but I promise you here, Naruto put a hand over his heart. When that day comes, I'll take every Shinigami with me. The captains were all dismissed. They each walked out in deep thought. There were only 3 people remaining in the room. One was Yamamoto, the second Naruto, and the third was a captain. He looked old like Yamamoto, but he had a small mustache and long light gray hair. As he walked towards Naruto, his white scarf flew, giving the effect that he was walking against the wind. He stopped in front of Naruto. I am Ginrei Kuchiki, captain of the 6th division and head of the Kuchiki clan. Naruto couldn't help but think of the Uchiha clan. They have clans here? Naruto thought as Yamamoto walked up to the two. Naruto looked at the 2 old men with a frown. What now? He asked. You will be joining the Kuchiki clan for your training to become a Shinigami. Yamamoto said. Naruto didn't say anything as he looked at the head of the clan. I thought that I had to go to the academy. Naruto asked, turning to the head captain. That would be true. Answered Yamamoto, but because of your condition it would be unwise to send you there. So I'll be trained by the Kuchiki? Naruto asked. Yes, answered Ginrei as he put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Welcome to the Kuchiki clan. He smiled. Naruto looked at the smiling man. I want you to meet my grandson, Ginrei said. you two could be good rivals. He doesn't get out of the manor much and could use a friend." Naruto frowned at the word friend. "And my sword?" Naruto asked. The two Shinigami looked at each other. Yamamoto looked at Naruto and pointed his cane at him. Naruto's eyes widened in interest when the wood started to disintegrate, revealing his Zanpakuto. "When you learn to control your power you can make the sword smaller," Yamamoto explained. Naruto smirked as he thought of all the possibilities he had now. This should be interesting, Naruto thought with a dark sneer. Naruto dodged a horizontal strike. Then he dodged a vertical strike. He continued to dodge the pattern of intense attacks until he decided he had had enough. He blocked the blade of his attacker with all 10 tails by creating a dome around him. The attacker jumped back. "Hiding behind your tails," a taunting voice said. Naruto smirked from behind his tails as he pointed towards the voice of the attacker. "Hado number 4. Pale lightning," Naruto whispered as his tails made an opening. An intense beam of white lightning shot straight through the opening that the tails created. Naruto could hear a grunt and smirked when he heard a thud. He released his tails and walked towards the smoking attacker. His tails seemed excited as he came closer to the figure. They were waving wildly behind him. "You lose again," Naruto said to the figure as he held out a hand for them to grab. Byakuya Kuchiki looked at the hand with annoyance, but slowly reached for it. When he stood up he straightened his long black hair and tied it in a ponytail with a red ribbon. He dusted his blue and white training gear and turned to face Naruto, who had a look of pure annoyance in his face. "Pointless," Naruto said, shaking his head. Byakuya smirked at this. The two could communicate with one word. "I am a noble," Byakuya said, "it's part of my job to always look clean and kempt, even in battle. You should try it too." He lectured, while pointing to the blood stain on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto rolled his eyes and wiped off the blood on his blue and white robes. He started to walk towards the Kuchiki Manor entrance, quickly followed by Byakuya. "You sure didn't look like a noble when we were fighting," Naruto joked, "you looked more like a berserker." Byakuya scoffed and walked past Naruto with his head held up high, but Naruto wasn't about to let it end there. "So how many wins is that for me?" Naruto asked with a smirk. Byakuya's proud pose deflated. He mumbled something incoherent. "What was that?" Naruto said, bring his hand up to his ear. "I didn't quite catch that." Byakuya growled. He knew that Naruto had heard him fine. After all, he had almost supersonic hearing. Byakuya mumbled a little bit louder, but Naruto continued to play stupid. Tick marks appeared on Byakuya's head as his hair covered his face. 72. "Okay, you've won 72 times." Byakuya yelled as he charged at Naruto, who was cackling like a madman. He was laughing so hard that he didn't even bother to dodge the attack. The two were soon rolling on the dirt. Several of the servants who were concerned about the noise ran outside to check what the problem was, only to be greeted with two teenagers covered in dirt and sweat wrestling like little kids. Some of the servants smiled and walked back into the building, while the others watched the blonde-haired one snickering, while the black-haired one looked like he wanted to murder said blonde. The wrestling match went on for minutes until a gruff voice was heard. "What do you two think are doing?" The two froze while the remaining servants ran off. Looking at them with a wise and old face was the head of the Kuchiki clan, Ginrei Kuchiki. Byakuya, quickly trying to save face, rushed up and gave a bow. "Grandpa, you're here to visit?" Byakuya asked as trying to look as cool he could. The effect was instantly killed by all the mud on his face and body. Naruto, who was still lying with his back on the ground, snickered at the pathetic attempt. Ginrei looked down at the blonde. "Naruto, why are you two in this position? You should be acting more like true nobles." Ginrei asked with genuine interest. Naruto stopped snickering and looked at the old man. Over the years he had come to look at the man like a grandfather. A stuck-up, never have fun, but still kind of okay, grandfather. He turned his stare to Byakuya before a small smile adorned his face. "We just finished our daily spar, and Byakuya was angry that he lost, so I told him that he wasn't acting like a true noble." Byakuya glared at Naruto only to be ignored. "When I told him that, he got mad at me and charged at me," Naruto continued in a sweet tone. "I saw that if I had dodged the attack, that he would have done damage to this fine estate, so I let him tackle me to the ground." He finished with a devious smirk. Ginrei shook his head at the excuse, "Just get cleaned up." He sighed. The two teens ran away from the old man arguing with each other. "Those two are going to be the end of me." Ginrei sighed as he walked away. Naruto could say that he was confused. On one side he hated Shinigami, and that hate was growing, but as he spent years with Byakuya and the Kuchiki, his Shinigami side started to like them. Oddly enough, he felt the need to remind himself that he hated Shinigami, but as each day passed his hate seemed to slowly melt away or increase tenfold. Naruto himself had never left the Kuchiki compound and only interacted with the Kuchiki servants, Byakuya and Ginrei Kuchiki, but he didn't mind. He was actually happy. Naruto stepped out of the bathhouse, towel wrapped around his waist. He dried himself up and put on a simple white shirt covered by a black hakama. It was custom made, as were all of his clothes, to adapt to his tales. He walked through the Kuchiki halls until he reached the dining room. "Master Uzumaki," a voice called to him. He looked up to see a servant walk up to him. The servant bowed and handed Naruto a form. "The head captain wants to have a meeting with you." The servant bowed and began to walk away when Naruto called them back. "Do I have to go now?" Naruto asked with dead seriousness. The servant raised an eyebrow at the seriousness of Naruto's tone. No, he actually said that you could wait until tomorrow," the servant said as he rubbed the back of his head in awkwardness. Naruto thanked the guard and entered the dining hall. He was expecting to see Byakuya, but the dining room was empty, save the 3 servants who were cleaning what looked like spaghetti off the walls. "What happened here?" Naruto asked, walking up to them. The 3 servants saw Naruto and blushed. Master Naruto, don't worry about this mess. Master Byakuya had a little accident with Lady Shihoin." Naruto raised an eyebrow at the name. "That captain again?" Naruto thought. He had heard that the captain of 2nd Squad, Yoruichi Shihoin, was a friend of Byakuya's and visited frequently, but in all the years he had lived in the Kuchiki manor, he had never seen her. It was almost as if she didn't want Naruto to see her. Though he never saw her, she always left clues that she had been there. A raging Byakuya was one of the most obvious clues. Broken furniture or destroyed paintings were only some other clues. Apparently Byakuya had a problem with a girl and would go on a rampage whenever she visited. "Do you know where they went?" he asked the servants. They told him that the 2 had run off in a random direction. Naruto thanked them, smiling at the blushes, and headed to the weapon room. He grabbed a training blade and swung it around. It was dulled a bit so that it couldn't do much damage, but it was good enough. He sheathed the sword and hid it behind his tails. He returned to the dining hall and found the servants still cleaning. He walked up to them. "Tell Master Ginrei that I'll be retrieving Byakuya if he asks for me." The servant seemed shocked at this statement. "But Master Uzumaki, you have never left the manor before," one of the servants spoke. Naruto kept his face passive at this comment. It was true that he had never left the Kuchiki property before. Not that he couldn't, he just never felt like it. "Do you know your way around?" She finished, trying to sound less insulting to him. "Thanks for the concern, but I'll be fine," Naruto said, walking out of the dining room. He ran to the exit and told the guard to let him pass. The guard asked if Naruto was sure of what he was doing, which angered Naruto, but being with the Kuchiki for so long had rubbed off on him, and he calmly told the guard to open the gate. Naruto jumped through a large hole in the wall. He didn't know where to go, so he decided to follow the destruction. "I'm getting closer," he thought to himself as he heard someone yell in pain. He quickened his pace as he searched for Byakuya. "Hey. What are you?" a voice called to him. He slowly turned to see a lone Shinigami pointing at him. Seeing the Shinigami made him angry. His hate for Shinigami was surfacing. "I asked you a question," the Shinigami said. He walked towards the Shinigami in a manner that only an elite noble could. "I've got to stop going to those etiquette lessons with Byakuya," Naruto thought to himself. He walked up to the Shinigami and waved his tails around. This act scared the Shinigami so much that he fell on his butt. The Shinigami slowly pointed at Naruto and looked at him with a glare. "You're a hollow," the man said. Naruto frowned at the glare. He walked up to the fallen man. He was about to speak when the wall behind him exploded. He quickly turned to see Byakuya fly at him. Byakuya hit Naruto, and the 2 hit the lone Shinigami, effectively knocking him out against the opposite wall. "You're getting slower, Byakuya, and I thought you said that your Shunpo was far superior to my," a voice taunted. Naruto was pissed as he pushed Byakuya off him. He stood up to see a beautiful purple-haired girl that was close to his height. She wore a long-sleeved captain's haori and a modified hakama. It looked more sleek and thinner than other uniforms. She had a huge grin as she taunted Byakuya. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, although he knew the answer. The girl opened her mouth to answer when Byakuya charged at her. "Yoruichi, you are dead," Byakuya yelled as he attacked her. Naruto watched in morbid fascination as the girl manhandled Byakuya, and with what looked like ease. "You're good," Naruto said as he poked and knocked out Byakuya. Yoruichi looked at the guy in surprise. Anybody who saw her would bow and show her respect. She noticed his 10 tails and smirked. "I know you. You're that Shinigami Hollow that old man Yamamoto talks about so much," she said out loud. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the captain and the way she had described him. "The old man talks about me?" he asked, picking up Byakuya and putting him on his shoulder. Yoruichi looked at the guy with confusion. She thought that she was the only one next to Shunsui who called the head captain old man. "Yeah, you should hear him go on about your potential and how we cannot let you fall to the wrong hands, like you're his grandson or something." She finished putting her hands on her hips. Naruto turned around to leave with the unconscious Byakuya, but stopped when Yoruichi shunpoed in front of him. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the girl. "What do you want?" he asked in annoyance. The girl noticed his tone and smirked. Old man said that you hate Shinigami. I can see that it's true, she said pointing at Byakuya. You just picked him up like a rag doll and didn't even ask why he was so angry at me. I just don't care, Naruto replied. Yoruichi smirked. Is that so? She asked. Byakuya groaned, causing Naruto to sigh. He dropped Byakuya, ignoring the groan of pain that came from him. I already know who you are and why he was so pissed at you. Naruto drew the sword hidden behind his back. Yoruichi raised an eyebrow at the action. Since I live in the Kuchiki manor and he's the next head, I can't have him disgracing himself. Naruto said in a monotone voice. He disappeared and reappeared beside Yoruichi. It would look bad on me. He said as he slashed at her vertically. She flipped back and avoided his swing. Naruto stood there and watched her jump to a rooftop. After I beat you, Naruto said, let's just say that it was Byakuya who did it. Naruto finished pointing his sword at her. After all, a captain being beaten by a non-Shinigami is pretty disgraceful, right? Yoruichi smirked at the comment and shunpoed next to Naruto. She delivered a powerful kick and was surprised when it was blocked by one of his tails. She jumped back to avoid a slash from Naruto. I'm stronger than Byakuya. Naruto simply said as he walked towards her. Naruto inwardly smirked. The nobility lessons were paying off big time. He was cool, calm, and collected. He shunpoed in front of the captain and slashed vertically. As expected, she dodged with a shunpo and reappeared behind him. Naruto smirked as he heard her gasp of surprise when his tails attacked her. He did a backflip and slashed at her head. She kicked the blade with a force that surprised him. He steadied himself in midair and prepared to land on his feet when he felt a figure over him. Yoruichi slammed the heel of her foot into Naruto's back only for him to disappear. What? She exclaimed when two Naruto, each with 5 tails, appeared pointing their fingers at her. The two shot blasts of red energy at her. All that was left was her Haori. The Mitsu Koho. Utsusemi, Black Ops technique. Flash step, Molten Cicada. The two Narutos weren't expecting this. Both flew into the ground. The clone disappeared. Naruto slowly stood up and shook off the pain. He turned to the captain who was smiling. Good thing she dodged. I almost killed her, Naruto thought looking around. He shunpoed and as expected her body tensed. Yoruichi watched as Naruto disappeared, but no attack came. She felt his presence and looked over to the unconscious body of Byakuya. The guy was next to him. He bent down and picked up the body. He pointed his sword at her. We're done. Naruto said in a monotone voice. He couldn't fight this girl. He wasn't hurt, but he knew what the outcome would be if he kept on fighting. I may be stronger than him, but if I lose to you then I won't have anything to brag about. This way when he wakes up I'll have fighting you and staying conscious over his head. Naruto finished. We'll see you later, Yoruichi. With a nod, he shunpoed away. Yoruichi watched Naruto shunpo away carrying Byakuya. The guy had only attacked her so he could brag about it to Byakuya. She frowned at the thought. That wasn't the only reason. She thought out loud to herself. Shaking the dark thoughts away, she looked at the incoming figure. A figure dressed in slim black landed in front of her and bowed. Yoruichi-sama, are you alright? Asked Sui-Fong. Yoruichi nodded as she looked at her bodyguard. She smirked as an idea popped into her head. Sui-Fong, I have a mission for you. She said with a smile. Sui-Fong's eyes widened at the words. She quickly bowed. What is the mission, my lady? She said in a serious tone. Yoruichi bopped her on the head. What did I say about honorifics? She asked. Sui-Fong, who was rubbing her head, bowed it in shame. I'm sorry, why, Yoruichi? She said. What is the mission? Yoruichi smirked. This is a stealth mission of the utmost importance. I need you to infiltrate the Kuchiki manor and gather info on a certain person for me. Sui-Fong gasped at the mission. The Kuchiki clan was one of the most powerful noble houses in all of Seoul society. If she was caught she could be killed. She steeled her nerve and looked at Yoruichi. I'm guessing that the target is Byakuya Kuchiki? She asked in a nervous tone. Silently she was hoping it was. Lady Yoruichi had always played around with the guy and this mission was probably to annoy him. Deciding that that was the reason, Sui-Fong relaxed, although she was a little disappointed that Yoruichi didn't trust her with an important mission. Actually, the target is not Byakuya, it's his friend. Sui-Fong tensed. She had heard that there was someone else who had been living in the manor with Byakuya, but Lady Yoruichi had never said a thing about them when she returned from taunting the Kuchiki. She decided to voice her confusion. You've never said anything about someone else living in the manor before. Yoruichi nodded at the statement. True, but I never saw him myself. I actually saw him once before when Urahara introduced his plan about creating a research and development division. I wasn't really paying attention to him on that day, I had a bad hangover. His power is no joke though. She finished with a reminiscent smile. Sui-Fong palmed her head at her idol's antics. Do you have any current info on him? She asked, returning back to the mission. Yoruichi nodded and crossed her arms. He has wild blonde hair that reaches his shoulders. He's a little bit taller than Byakuya, but the most noticeable feature he has is that he has 10 white hollow tails. Sui-Fong raised an eyebrow at her description. He wouldn't be too hard to find, but tails. When you feel like you have enough info of him, report back to me. Yoruichi said with a commanding voice. Oh, and you might need this. It belongs to Byakuya. She smiled as she tossed Sui-Fong a red ribbon. She nodded and disappeared, headed for the manor. Yoruichi smirked and started to jump from roof to roof back to the second division. Good luck, Sui-Fong, she said with a smile. I can't wait to see little Byakuya's face. Her smile fell a little. Naruto, huh? Naruto sighed in relaxation as he lied on a tree branch. This tree was one of his favorite nap spots because it was planted right in the middle of the garden and was surrounded by beautiful flowers. The leaves of the tree also acted as perfect sun blockers. Yep, Naruto was content. He had dropped of a fuming Byakuya in the manor. Why the guy was so pissed about losing to a girl, he would never know. What he did know was that he couldn't say that he had a crush on her. Naruto smirked at the thought. Byakuya liking the girl was as likely as, well, Byakuya dating the girl. The guy wasn't gay. It was just a known fact that Byakuya Kuchiki was more interested in becoming the head of the Kuchiki house than he was with doing regular stuff like dating girls. On that thought he remembered the purple-haired girl. She was actually beautiful when he thought about it. He froze and palmed his forehead. Why the hell am I thinking about? He froze in thought when he heard a rustling. He stayed still and slowly turned his head to the location of the sound. There wasn't a single sign of life. He turned his head and scanned the area. He stared at a particular bush for a while before deciding that there was nothing wrong. He slowly shut his eyes and went to sleep. Sui-Fong sighed as she watched Naruto go to sleep. She had accidentally stepped on a twig and was almost discovered. This was dangerous. This man stared directly at her for a good 5 minutes. Normally she wouldn't have made such a blunder, but she had been so preoccupied with watching him that she stopped paying attention to where she was stepping. What surprised her though was the fact that he had heard the twig snap. It had barely made a sound. Sui-Fong could honestly say that this man intrigued her. He was supposed to be a noble, yet he did simple things that a true noble would frown at. He played around with the servants and even helped them out. It wasn't bad per se, but nobles didn't do that. She had traveled through the Kuchiki manor and had learned quite a few things. His name was Naruto Uzumaki. The servants thought very highly of him and most of the girl servants had feelings for him. They would gossip about things like what kind of girls he liked or if he would ask any of them out on a date. She had even watched in shock as the girls fought over who would serve him. She had also learned that Naruto had an unnatural hate of Shinigami and mostly kept to himself in the manor. He and Byakuya were like brothers and trusted each other completely. Deciding that she had enough info on the man, she started to sneak away when she heard movement. She froze and turned to see a servant run to the tree that Naruto was in and call him to eat dinner. Sui-Fong was confused with what happened next. Can you do me a favor? Naruto asked the servant. The servant smiled and bowed. Anything for you Naruto-sama, the servant said. Can you run to the weapons storage room and get me a dull training blade? Naruto asked. The servant was confused by the request but nodded and ran off. Sui-Fong watched as Naruto jumped of the tree and began to stretch. The servant returned carrying a sheathed sword. He handed it to Naruto and bowed. Naruto dismissed the servant. You might hear some swords clashing, just tell the others to ignore it. Naruto called to the retreating servant. Sui-Fong tensed as he moved toward the bush she was hiding in. Stopped a few feet away from the bush and pointed a finger at it. Come out Shinigami or you'll die. He said in a monotone voice laced with anger. Sui-Fong visibly froze. How did he see me? When did he see me? Sui-Fong thought to herself. As if reading her mind, Naruto spoke up. I can sense any Shinigami anywhere, no matter how well they hide. It comes with being part hollow. He finished, drawing the sheathed blade. Sui-Fong slowly stepped out of the bush and into the light. Naruto smirked as he got a good look of her face. Without warning, Naruto charged at Sui-Fong. She flipped back and avoided the swing. Naruto smirked at how she dodged the strike. He flipped through the air and went for a vertical slash. Sui-Fong kicked the blade and sent Naruto flying. He steadied himself in midair and landed on his feet. You fight just like her. A little slower, but almost exactly like her. Naruto said as he pointed a finger at her. Sui-Fong bent down to dodge whatever was coming. Heido number 4. Pale Naruto stopped in mid-cast and frowned. I almost did something stupid. Naruto thought to himself. If he had cast that Heido, then the whole house would have come to check on him. He really didn't feel like fighting this girl, so he did the only thing that came to mind. Why are you here? Naruto asked. Sui-Fong kept silent. She would not reveal her mission. That was the way of the Black Ops. Answer me or you die, Naruto warned. He saw her flinch, but remained strong. Interesting, Naruto said, sheathing his sword. Very well girl, follow me. Sui-Fong, who was confused and shocked at the comment, could only sputter out her words. What do you mean interesting? She asked. Naruto stopped walking and turned to face her. That woman Shihoin sent you to return Byakuya's hair tie, right? Sui-Fong, who didn't want to cause trouble, nodded and pulled out the hair tie. She was about to hand it to him when he shook his head. It's not you've got to give it to Byakuya. He should be at dinner now. Naruto said as he continued to walk away only to stop again. He turned to Sui-Fong and sighed. What's your name, Shinigami? Naruto asked. Sui-Fong released the held-in breath that she didn't know she had. My name is Sui-Fong, apprentice to. I didn't ask for all of that, I just asked for your name. Now follow me. Naruto interrupted. Sui-Fong looked at Naruto with confusion. He was acting weird. If your master thinks I will be a part of her playthings, she is dead wrong, Naruto said. If you won't tell me your reasons, then I'll use you as a hostage. What? Sui-Fong exclaimed. Naruto placed a finger over his lips and said, be silent. Hostages don't speak unless spoken to. Now, why don't you join us for dinner? Sui-Fong looked at Naruto in shock. What? Sui-Fong asked as Naruto walked to dinner. Naruto calmly and silently walked through the halls of the Kuchiki compound. He looked at Sui-Fong to catch her stealing a glance at him. She quickly looked away. After a moment of walking she said, excuse me, but… Must I say it again? Naruto interrupted. Hostages do not speak unless spoken to. Sui-Fong looked down. She looked around in an attempt to find an escape. Not a wise thing to do, Naruto said as if reading her mind. I wonder what would happen to your master if it was revealed that she sent an enemy spy into our compounds. Sui-Fong's eyes widened. He was right. She had infiltrated into the compound. She really was his hostage. But if that were true, then why was he walking her to dinner? Sui-Fong looked down in shame. I'm really weak, she thought to herself. Yoruichi-sama trusted me and is awaiting my report, but I was easily captured. She was so deep in her thoughts that she hadn't realized that Naruto had stopped and she bumped into his tails. Watch where you're going, girl, Naruto said. We don't want an accident. He turned his attention to the servant girl in front of him. Oddly, the servant was glaring at Sui-Fong. Naruto greeted the servant. Her expression changed instantly. Dinner is ready, Naruto-sama, the servant said in a kind tone. Naruto nodded and asked, can you please tell Byakuya that I'm inviting a guest for dinner? The servant's expression changed again. She gave Sui-Fong a nasty glare before turning back to Naruto and smiling. Of course, Naruto-kun, she said before realizing the kun at the end. She blushed and quickly rushed away. Naruto watched her with a small smile on his face. He turned to Sui-Fong. Come, he commanded. The two walked past a few more corridors before reaching the dining hall. Naruto stopped at the entrance. Be sure to return that ribbon to Byakuya. He told Sui-Fong before opening the double doors. Byakuya looked up as Naruto entered. He was waiting for him before he started eating. When the servant told him that Naruto was bringing a guest, Byakuya had to see whoever it was for himself. He saw a cute petite girl standing behind Naruto and frowned. The girl was wearing a militia corporation uniform. His frown grew when he recognized the girl as one of Yoruichi's personal bodyguards. He looked up at Naruto, who was watching his every expression with a sinisterly calm expression. It was then that Byakuya understood. He smirked and slowly stood up. Welcome, he greeted Sui-Fong. So you will be joining us for dinner? Byakuya walked towards Naruto in an elegant manner. Sui-Fong took an unconscious step back, causing Naruto to inwardly smirk at the girl's spy. What happened next surprised him. In a speed Naruto had never seen before, Byakuya appeared next to him and swiped the training sword hidden by his tails. In a fluid motion, Byakuya unsheathed the sword and slashed at Sui-Fong. Naruto smirked as he pushed Sui-Fong away from the slash. Byakuya shunpoed behind the girl and placed the dulled sword around her neck. Where is your master? Byakuya asked in a sinister tone. As expected, Naruto thought, walking to a seat. Sui-Fong was scared. Yoruichi-sama said that this man would go wild every time he saw her, she thought. What do I do? She asked herself. Luckily Naruto came to her rescue. Her master sent her to return your ribbon, he said. I have no doubt that she is on her way now. Yoruichi landed in the Kuchiki manner with expert silence. She quickly searched the area before fading away into the darkness. She waited for the guard outside the entrance to open the door. Before the door closed, she quickly slid into the building. She had been sure Sui-Fong would have returned by now. What was holding her up? Where are you, Sui-Fong? Yoruichi thought as she traveled through the corridors. Byakuya pondered Naruto's words. He looked at Sui-Fong, then to Naruto. He nodded and released her. Yoruichi-sama wanted me to give this back to you, Sui-Fong said as soon as she was out of Byakuya's grasp. Something told her that it would have been best if she hadn't mentioned Yoruichi's name. Byakuya's eye twitched at the sight of the red ribbon. He slowly reached out and took the ribbon. Naruto, seeing the expression on his face and the way his hands shook with apparent righteous fury, smirked in interest. Now we wait for the final piece, Naruto thought. A moment of silence passed and Naruto stood up. Byakuya, Naruto said. Prepare yourself. Naruto could sense a new presence inside the building and it felt familiar. He smirked when he realized who the presence belonged to. His smirk increased as the presence came closer and closer. Byakuya and Sui-Fong both froze when they sensed the presence. Byakuya turned to the doorway. His hair covered his face. He took the ribbon and tied it in his hair. Naruto, he called, come with me. Naruto walked towards the door. I was planning to, he replied. He cracked his knuckles and rolled his shoulders. Naruto pulled a second hidden sword from his tails and held it up. This one was not dull. Its blade was kept clean and sharp. This blade was meant to kill. I get the weak sword? Byakuya asked, staring at Naruto's blade. Would you go for a killing blow? Naruto asked. Who knows, Byakuya replied with a smirk. Stop, Sui-Fong exclaimed. She knew what the two were planning to do. If you wish to harm Lady Yoruichi, you'll have to go through me. Naruto and Byakuya stared at the girl as if she had lost her mind. The presence was getting closer and closer. Naruto and Byakuya disappeared and reappeared next to Sui-Fong, ready to strike. Suddenly Byakuya flew toward the entrance and buzzed through the doors while Naruto flew into the dining room table. Isn't 2 against 1 a bit unfair for nobles? A feminine voice asked. Naruto stood up, covered in food. No, drenched was the appropriate word. Shihoin Yoruichi, Naruto said in a pissed off tone. You've made a very big mistake. Byakuya burst through the doors, poised to strike. Yoruichi grabbed Sui-Fong and the two jumped away. They dashed toward the entrance, but Naruto appeared in front of them. Did you get faster? Yoruichi asked, dodging a swipe from Naruto. Byakuya appeared from above with an overhead slash. Sui-Fong jumped and met his blade with her own hidden sword. In a fluid motion she spun in midair and kicked Byakuya away. Byakuya fixed himself and landed next to Naruto. Shihoin Yoruichi, Byakuya said in a monotone voice as he pointed his sword at her, you will pay. Yoruichi raised an eyebrow. Are you still upset about the ribbon thing? She asked, placing a hand on her hip. Byakuya glared at her as if she grew another head. You sent your lackey here to insult me. Byakuya replied. Yoruichi smirked and said, I sent her here to return it to you. I only came here because you were holding her hostage. Yoruichi finished glaring at him. Byakuya's rage slowly disappeared. Naruto frowned at this. I didn't keep her here, Naruto did. Byakuya said, ending with a question. Yoruichi raised an eyebrow. Naruto smirked as he shook his head. He turned to Yoruichi with a serious face. Don't let her lies fool you, Naruto said. If that's the only reason she had sent that girl here, then why? Naruto drifted off. No need for explanations. Naruto pointed his sword at Yoruichi. I'm covered in food. Someone has to pay for this, and sadly it's you. Let's be done with this. Naruto, did you set this whole thing up? Byakuya asked. Naruto smirked. This should be interesting, he thought. He turned to Byakuya, what if I did? He replied in a serious tone. Naruto was now surrounded by all 3 Shinigami. He leaned back in time to avoid a strike from Byakuya. Naruto forgot his surroundings and did a 180 backflip to counter, only to hit Sui-Fong. The two fell with a grunt. Naruto felt something soft on his lips. He looked up to see his lips on Sui-Fong's. He blushed and quickly got up, only to be tackled by Byakuya. Yoruichi helped Sui-Fong up as Naruto and Byakuya wrestled. The two watched the two boys wrestle when a clearing of the throat was heard. Everyone looked at the entrance to see Ginrei Kuchiki staring at them in disbelief. Grandfather! Byakuya exclaimed. Naruto and Byakuya, now both covered in food, quickly stood up and bowed. A draft from outside blew into the dining room, solidifying the awkward moment. Later that night. We'll see you guys later. Yoruichi said with a smile as she and Sui-Fong waved goodbye. Naruto scoffed and turned to walk back in when someone grabbed him. He felt something soft on his lips and realized that it was Yoruichi kissing him. It doesn't mean anything, she said with a smile as she put an arm around Sui-Fong. I just didn't want Sui-Fong to have her first kiss alone. Naruto was silent. You said you didn't like Shinigami, Yoruichi continued, we plan on changing that. Naruto kept his face passive, but he had to admit that the two of them were cute. Sui-Fong smiled at him and the two shunpoed away. Naruto turned and walked inside, followed by an open-mouthed Byakuya. That night Naruto laid awake in thought. He touched his lips. A small smirk spread across his face. Interesting, Naruto said. He heard a groan of annoyance and smiled. Naruto had kissed girls before, but only when he was alive, and sadly he had forgotten most of those times. That night Naruto had a dream of him in a large hot spring surrounded by girls from all over. It was the best dream he ever had. The next morning Naruto woke earlier than usual. Today was important to him. He was supposed to meet Yamamoto. Naruto got dressed in normal Shinigami attire. He reached the captain's meeting hall where he saw the head captain waiting for him. "Good morning," Naruto said with a respectful bow. The head captain looked at Naruto in confusion. "Since when do you respect your elders?" Yamamoto asked. Naruto smirked and rose before crossing his arms. "I don't, but I respect you," Naruto answered in a sarcastic manner. The head captain chuckled. "So what did you want to see me for, old man?" "Follow me," the head captain said. Naruto nodded and followed. The two walked for a good moment taking in the sights. It was silent until the head captain asked Naruto, "Do you know what a Shinigami is?" Naruto was surprised by the question. "No, I don't," he replied truthfully. "Shinigami are balancers," Yamamoto answered. "We guide the souls of the dead and eliminate those whose souls cannot be redeemed." "Redeemed?" Naruto said to himself. "And what gives the Shinigami the right to judge that?" he asked. "Nothing," Yamamoto curtly replied. "But as I said, we are balancers, and to balance we must keep peace, and to keep peace we must exterminate great evil. That is the will of the 13 court guard squads and all Shinigami." "But what do you consider evil?" Naruto asked. "The world is not black and white, Naruto. I will not tell you that hollow are evil because I see you as a way of change." Naruto looked at the head captain. "A way of change? What does that mean?" Naruto thought. He stopped walking and looked at their destination, the Sakyoku Hill. The two reached Sakyoku Hill in minutes. Naruto felt at ease close to the giant blade. "I believe that you will one day change Shinigami and Hollow. That's why I want you to communicate with the sword that stands for the Shinigami," Yamamoto said. Naruto looked at Yama in confusion but remained silent. Yamamoto walked up to the giant halberd. He tried to place a hand on it only to be pushed back by an invisible force. He turned to Naruto, who was watching in fascination. "Did you see how the sword repelled me?" Yamamoto asked. Naruto nodded and kept silent. Yamamoto walked to Naruto and stood beside him. "You are special, Naruto. You have been reborn as a Shinigami and a Hollow. I believe that you have the potential to be the strongest out of all of us," he said, looking at Naruto with a fatherly smile. "But, to gain that power you must use both gifts that have been given to you, and I believe that first you have to become a true Shinigami to do this." Naruto listened intently as Yama finished. He looked at his tails, then to Yamamoto. "Do you say that because you're afraid that my hollow side will take over?" Naruto asked, turning his sight to the Sakyoku. When Yamamoto didn't answer, Naruto walked towards the giant blade. Yamamoto watched him with studying eyes. Naruto reached the halberd and reached out to touch it. The air around Naruto started to crackle. The Reiatsu around Naruto began to increase. His tails waved around madly as he felt the power of the sword. Black fire began to form around Naruto and the halberd. For some reason the black fire reminded Naruto of something, someone, but what and who? The ropes holding the blade snapped and the fire became a geyser. It surrounded Naruto and blocked him from Yamamoto. Yamamoto stepped back at the sheer heat coming from the black flames. Naruto was completely surrounded by black flames. The more time passed, the more Naruto began to remember something. The flames began to burn Naruto, but he felt no pain. "Call my name," a voice echoed in his head. "Call my name or you will burn." Naruto looked down to see that just as the voice said, the black flames were slowly burning his legs. "My name is," the voice said, fading away. Naruto looked at his legs. The flames had reached his ankles. He looked around. All he saw was the black flames. "Call my name," the voice said again. This time it was different. Naruto could make out the tone of the voice. It was distressed. "Do you wish to burn?" Naruto then realized that the more the flames burned him, the more he remembered. A name was slowly coming to him. Naruto said, trying to memorize the name. "Call my name." The flames reached Naruto's stomach. Naruto looked at his hands that were now slowly burning away. "Itachi," Naruto said. The flames continued to burn him, and Naruto remembered more. "Itachi, Sasuke, Madara," Naruto said. How he knew those names was a mystery to Naruto, but they were the first names that came to him. Naruto then realized that the flames were still burning and that the more he remembered, the flame speed increased. The flames had now reached his neck and Naruto was now a floating head. My name," the voice yelled. "Do you want to burn forever?" Naruto saw no other way and smiled as the flames burned his remaining head. Naruto's eyes snapped open. He slowly stood up and looked around. Everywhere he looked he could only see white. "Where am I?" he thought as he looked at his feet. Feeling that it was safe, Naruto took a step. When his feet hit solid, yet invisible ground, he smirked. The smirk quickly vanished when he heard laughter. "Who's there?" he asked out loud. The laughter increased. Naruto kept silent. "He does not understand the importance of his dance," a deep, mature voice said. "That's not like you, Naruto," another voice said. "You never gave up before, so why now?" Just how many voices are there? Naruto thought in confusion. He turned to his tails that were flailing wildly. He put his hand to his head and groaned. His head was beginning to throb. He groaned even louder as the pain increased. "What's wrong?" a voice asked. Naruto didn't look up but grabbed his head tighter as the pain started to pound. The laughter inside his head was growing. "S shut," Naruto started. He coughed up blood as his chest began to tighten. The voices on the outside were silent, but the laughter inside Naruto was overwhelming. Naruto scrunched up his face in a mix of pain and concentration. He slowly stood up fighting the pain and noise. "Shut up!" Naruto yelled. A dark red aura exploded from Naruto and covered everything. Naruto wiped the blood of his lips. The pain and laughter were gone, as though it had never been there. "Well done," a calm voice said from behind. Naruto perked up. The voice was different than the rest. Unlike the others that were everywhere, this voice was coming in one direction. Naruto slowly turned around. There stood a young man in his early 20s. Naruto stared into the man's red eyes. "Uchiha Itachi," Naruto said. "Naruto," Itachi said with a stern look on his face. "Have you given up?" Naruto stared at Itachi and looked down. "So many things have happened. Why is it that all I remember is you and the others?" "Because you promised to meet us again in the next life," another voice said behind Naruto. Naruto turned to face Uchiha Sasuke. "Naruto," Sasuke greeted. "Sasuke, Itachi, why are you guys here?" Naruto asked. "Our power is with you," a mature voice said. "Yet you give up. Perhaps I underestimated your own power." Uchiha Madara appeared to the right of Naruto. A realization struck Naruto. "Am I dead?" Naruto asked. "No, not yet," Madara answered, crossing his arms. "Why am I here?" Naruto asked. The three Uchiha walked up to him. Madara placed a hand on Naruto's back. Sasuke placed a hand on his left shoulder. Itachi placed a hand on his right shoulder. "Naruto, our wills are with you. You're not alone," Itachi said. "Naruto, you have to surpass everyone," Sasuke said. Madara shook his head and said, "Till this day I still don't understand the meaning of will, but my power is yours." Light began to engulf Naruto. Naruto understood it now. He felt power entering him. He wasn't alone. He was never alone. "We'll meet again," Naruto said. "We'll be waiting," Itachi replied. The three smiled at him and disappeared. Naruto snapped awake. He was completely surrounded by black flames. The flame was burning around his right eye. "Call my name," the voice said. "Amaterasu," Naruto yelled. The flames stopped burning and began to dance around Naruto. Naruto's body slowly came back as if it had never been burned. Naruto heard an angelic voice and looked up. A black crow flew from the black flames and landed on his shoulder. The crow had a unique feature. On each wing was a pure white feather gently hidden by the other black feathers, and its eyes were bright silver. "I hear your call," an angelic female voice emitted from the crow. "I am Amaterasu Mikami. The great Kami who shines in the heaven. My flames will forever burn for you." Naruto looked at the crow and smiled. This was his power. The black flames began to rise up and take shape. They took the form of a giant black phoenix. "You're the Sakyoku?" Naruto asked. The bird nodded. "Will you fight with me too?" The bird nodded again. "Soon when you are ready," a voice said. Naruto blinked as the phoenix flew into the air and disappeared. As it disappeared, the halberd began to crack, revealing a large and long black side. The handle was slightly curved and had millicent carvings. The top of the pole was a large phoenix head that curved inwards to attach to the blade. The blade itself was huge and set inwards. The whole thing radiated a feeling of death. Naruto stared at the side with awe. The wall of black flames slowly died down with Amaterasu on Naruto's shoulders. He felt a presence behind him and turned to see Yamamoto and every Shinigami in Soul Society staring at the side as if they was expecting it to come to life. Many Shinigami who had felt the power from the Sakyoku had come to witness the spectacular event. "Old man," Naruto said when Yamamoto walked up to him. "I'm stronger now. I'm ready to become a Shinigami." A month later. The entire Kuchiki compound was filled with excitement. All the servants were preparing for a huge feast. Today was a big day after all. In the captain's meeting room, Naruto stood in front of the head captain and Ginrei Kuchiki. The other captains stood in attention. Naruto was garbed in formal Kuchiki attire. Byakuya stood behind him in the same attire. "Naruto," Ginrei said, stepping up to him. "I, Kuchiki Ginrei, head of the Kuchiki clan, inaugurate you into the Kuchiki clan. From henceforth you shall be known as Kuchiki Naruto." Ginrei placed the noble Kuchiki necklace around Naruto's neck. Naruto bowed and the captains clapped. When Naruto got up, Byakuya placed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto turned to him. Byakuya smiled. "Welcome to the family, brother," Byakuya said. Naruto smiled at his new brother. Later that night. Naruto lay in bed wide awake. So much was happening. He released his sword and became a Kuchiki. Next week he and Byakuya would go to the academy and face their best students as a graduation test. Naruto wasn't in the mood to sleep, so he left the room and decided to take a stroll. When Naruto stepped into the cool night air he called Amaterasu. The black crow materialized from thin air in a flash of black flames before landing on his shoulders. "What's the matter?" she asked him. "Not much," Naruto thought looking at the moon. "Something is wrong. I feel it in your heart. I know I'm not a Shinigami and I'll never try to be, but..." Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts when he heard, "Hey." Naruto looked to see Shihoin Yoruichi standing on the walls of the compound waving at him. Amaterasu flew into the sky. "What do you want?" Naruto asked in an annoyed tone. Yoruichi made a pout face. She jumped down next to him. "Oh, so now that you're an official Kuchiki you're too good to talk to us commoners." "Very funny," Naruto replied in a sarcastic tone. "Why are you here?" Yoruichi looked at him and gave a sly smile. "I came to see you of course," she said. "And why would you do that?" Naruto asked completely unfazed. "Because I like you," Yoruichi replied getting up close to his face. Naruto paused. Naruto looked at her for a second and she began to laugh. Just kidding," she said. Naruto scoffed and looked away. He wouldn't admit it, but a blush had crept its way on his face. "What's your real reason for coming here?" he asked after gaining back his composure. "I was actually passing by when I saw you," Yoruichi replied. "Is that so? Well then you should be on your way," Naruto replied. He turned to walk away. Yoruichi gave him a sad smile. She turned to walk away as well when Naruto called out to her. "Yoruichi, thanks for coming to see me," he said. Yoruichi watched him walk away and smiled. The next day. Naruto and Byakuya were training together. The two had their Shinigami tests a week from today. The two would have to face two registered Shinigami. Because they were of the Kuchiki clan, their opponents would be top-class fighters. In preparation for this, the two were currently meditating on the training field. After a good hour of meditation they began sparring. "Naruto, show me your Shikai," Byakuya demanded shooting a pale lighting. Naruto sidestepped the attack and dashed at Byakuya. "There's no need for that," Naruto replied. "I can beat you without it." Byakuya jumped back and took a stance. "I see," he said, "then I will force you to use it. Scatter, Senbonzakura." This was Naruto's first time seeing Byakuya's Shikai. He watched in interest as Byakuya's blade separated into tiny pink petals. The petals began to surround him. "What's this?" Naruto thought looking around. Suddenly Naruto felt multiple cuts all over his body. Naruto fell to one knee. "The petals are blade fragments." Naruto thought as he fought the sharp pain all over his body. "This is my Shikai," Byakuya said. "Senbonzakura is the ultimate attack. How can you dodge 1,000 blades?" Naruto nodded in respect of his brother's power. "I see," he said. "Then let me return the favor." Amaterasu landed on Naruto's right shoulder. "It'll be over in a second," he warned. Naruto helped Byakuya up. "Are you alright?" he asked. "I'm fine," Byakuya answered. His clothes were completely torn and had scorch marks all over. "Your power is unbelievable," Byakuya said looking at Amaterasu as it gently pecked Naruto's hair. "Do not tell anyone about it," Naruto replied. "You're the only one who's seen it." "Do you plan on revealing it at the test?" Byakuya asked looking around. Naruto nodded. "If it's needed," he said. The two continued to train during until night came. At night. "Why do you train?" Byakuya asked while the two relaxed outside. After a hard day of training the two always relaxed in the moonlight. Naruto took a deep breath. He truly loved the night. It was serene and quiet. "That's a weird question," Naruto replied. "No it's not," Byakuya said sitting up. "You, whose power is above all else, what do you wish to achieve?" Naruto thought for a moment. What did he want? Naruto started, "I want everything." A week later. Naruto and Byakuya quietly sat in the waiting room. After a week of severe training, the awaited day had finally arrived. The arena was packed with Shinigami who wanted to see the two Kuchiki prodigies fight. A special area was made for the captains and vice-captains. Naruto could hear the cheers of the Shinigami and smirked. The two sat in meditative silence until a brown-haired Shinigami arrived. The Shinigami bowed to the two and held out a clipboard. "Kuchiki Byakuya, your opponent will be child prodigy Hitsugaya Toshiro." The name caused Naruto to look up. A small smile appeared on his face. Child prodigy, Naruto thought. Byakuya stood up slowly walked toward the entrance. Naruto waited a second before following in suite. He stopped at the entrance and watched as Byakuya stepped into the arena. The crowd exploded into cheers, but Byakuya remained stoic. He took his side of the field and stood in a dignified manner befitting a Kuchiki. Toshiro came out of his side wearing an official Shinigami uniform. On his left arm was the badge for vice captain. Naruto smirked at it. "Let's see what the so-called prodigy can do," he thought. Byakuya and Toshiro bowed to each other. The gong sounded and Toshiro went on the offensive. He drew his sword and raised his spiritual pressure. The other students watched in awe at how high the boy's spiritual pressure was going. Just a warning, Toshiro said, I won't hold back. He went into a stance where he held the blade with both hands and twisted it so that the flat side faced Byakuya. Toshiro flash-stepped and appeared next to Byakuya. He went for a horizontal strike when Byakuya jumped back and disappeared. Toshiro searched the entire ground but couldn't see or sense Byakuya anywhere. Byakuya appeared behind Toshiro and went for a pierce. Toshiro twisted his body, barely dodging the blade. Hado number 4 pale lightning, Byakuya said. Toshiro's eyes widened when a large concentrated bolt of lightning appeared from Byakuya's finger and shot straight at him. He kicked off the ground and flipped through the air. He saw a shadow and looked up. Toshiro twisted his body, barely dodging Byakuya's drop attack. He increased his power output and met Byakuya's blade. The two jumped back and faced off. The crowd went wild. I can't make any more mistakes. Toshiro thought. He didn't have time to come up with a strategy when Byakuya appeared in front of him with a barrage of strikes. Toshiro was able to dodge them, but before he could retaliate, Byakuya disappeared. Akib number 61 Rikijmum, 6 light rod prison. 6 beams of light slammed into Toshiro's midsection. Byakuya appeared in front of Toshiro. Byakuya placed his sword near Toshiro's neck. You've lost, Byakuya said. Toshiro smirked. Is that so? He asked. Suddenly Toshiro's body froze and he split in half. Byakuya jumped back in time to avoid a stream of ice from hitting him. Toshiro appeared behind Byakuya and charged while increasing his output of power. The area began to get colder and colder. The students in the crowd sat at the edge of their seats. Some began to shiver as the temperature dropped. Even a few teachers that were watching started to shiver. Toshiro smirked when he saw Byakuya's left hand slightly shivering. Byakuya dodged a strike from Toshiro. He raised his arm to counter when the air became thicker. What is this? Byakuya thought. He jumped away from Toshiro. Toshiro didn't give chase, but increased his output even more. The air became frigid. Toshiro explained when Byakuya looked at his own shivering hand, I can control the temperature of the water molecules in the air. No matter where you go, my attacks will always hit. To prove his point, Toshiro swiped the air. Suddenly Byakuya slid back as if an invisible whip had hit him. Truly impressive, Byakuya complimented when gained his composure, but your power is lacking. With a stoic face, Byakuya disappeared and reappeared in front of Toshiro. The two clashed blades and the crowd watched in stunned silence. Toshiro grunted when Byakuya nipped his cheek with the tip of his blade. He flipped back to avoid a pale lightning from Byakuya. Release your sword, Byakuya said, closing his eyes. Or you may die. The spiritual pressure that exploded from him completely surprised everyone in the arena. Toshiro let his own power explode to keep himself up. The real battle starts now. Naruto thought from the sidelines. Scatter, Senbonzakura, Byakuya commanded. A wave of pink petals circled the air as Byakuya's sword separated. The crowd was stunned at the beauty. Suddenly the pink petal shot at Toshiro. Multiple cuts appeared all over Toshiro as the petal cut him. Toshiro jumped away from the petals. He was panting in pain. His attacks are brutal. Toshiro thought, watching the petals in case they moved. Release your sword or you will die, Byakuya said again. Toshiro slowly stood up. He nursed the cuts as he looked down. The temperature began to decrease even further. Naruto could sense a great power surrounding Toshiro. Alright, Toshiro said, if you want to see my true power that badly. He glared at Byakuya and let his power explode. Toshiro jumped into the sky and yelled, rain upon the frosted frozen sky, Hyorin Maru. Naruto watched in interest as Toshiro's blade grew slightly. A chain sprouted from the hilt and at the end a crescent-shaped blade. But the truly interesting thing was that the clear sky was slowly darkening. Naruto's eyes widened as water infused with ice erupted from the tip and surrounded Toshiro. The water created a giant flow of ice shaped like a Chinese dragon. Toshiro swiped the sword a few times before pointing it at Byakuya. The dragon charged at the Kuchiki. The spectators all watched in awe as the dragon froze everything in its path. Senbonzakura's petals shattered the dragon into water, but it reformed. Byakuya quickly tried to shoot pale lightning at the dragon, but it curved away from the blast. He tried to jump away from the dragon, but found that he was frozen to the spot. The dragon collided with him and covered him in ice. When the dust cleared, Byakuya was frozen in a large chunk of ice surrounded by mist. The crowd exploded in cheers. Toshiro landed with a thump. He waited for Byakuya to respond, but the guy was completely encased in ice. The crowd had started to cheer at the apparent victory when pink petals circled the ice and shattered it. Toshiro's eyes widened when Byakuya appeared unharmed from his attack. Toshiro prepared to create another ice dragon. Byakuya returned his sword to its normal state. What is he doing? Naruto thought, watching in confusion. The title prodigy truly belongs to you, Byakuya praised with a stoic voice. So be proud that you will be the first to fall at the hands of my Bankai. The crowd was in awe. Naruto's eyes widened. Impossible. he thought, staring at Byakuya. "Bankai," Byakuya commanded. Byakuya dropped his sword and it phased into the ground as if it were a pool of water. The sword created multiple ripples that turned the entire arena black. Then a forest of countless giant blades rose from the ground and covered the entire field. "Scatter, Senbonzakura Kagayashi," vibrant display of 1,000 cherry blossoms. The blades shatter in a tsunami of pink petals that instantly covered Toshiro. The entire arena exploded in dust. When it cleared, Toshiro was face down on the dirt covered in blood. Byakuya sealed his Bankai and walked over to Toshiro's body. The match was over in an instant. "Your power is impressive," he said, "but it pales in comparison to the 1,000 blades that create Senbonzakura." Byakuya turned and walked away. The crowd that was in awe and shock exploded into cheer. Byakuya looked up at Naruto, who was watching with a frown. When Byakuya was out of the view of the crowd, he smirked at Naruto. "Surprised?" Byakuya asked Naruto in the waiting room. Naruto smirked and said, "No, I felt the power in you. I just didn't know you had unlocked it already." "Nothing ever surprises you," Byakuya replied with a smile. "Not true, but I am proud of my brother." The two nodded at each other. The brown-haired Shinigami returned and looked at Naruto. "Kuchiki Naruto, your opponent will be vice captain of the 5th division, Ichimari Jin." Naruto's tail gently swayed. "Vice captain?" Naruto replied. He began to walk toward the arena with Byakuya following. "I guess I can't take it easy," Naruto thought as he stepped into the arena. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.